Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I am your host, Jake Lowe. On this show, myself and my regular co-host, Mark Hoffmeyer, have gone through the entire Deep Blue Sea trilogy scene by scene. We're now looking at some Deep Blue Sea adjacent films. Mark's one every other week. This is one of his off weeks. But that's okay. What's a Deep Blue Sea adjacent film? That is films featuring aquatic action, sharks, or directed by Renny Harlin, and we are continuing to sweep up the remnants of Renny Harlin's career, of the films we haven't got to yet, with Exorcist: The Beginning, and this is being released, I believe, the same week that a new Exorcist film is coming out. It's October, it's horror month, so we're here tackling Exorcist: The Beginning. It feels appropriate. What is Exorcist: The Beginning? Well, it is an Exorcist prequel that, prior to doing this podcast, I didn't know existed. It's from 2004, mostly directed by Renny Harlin, and starring our boy Stellan Skarsgard, as well as Isabella Scorupco, James Darcy, Ralph Brown, Julian Wadham, Ben Cross, Alan Ford, David Bradley, some fantastic British character actors cropping up in here. I was delighted to see. And it's a prequel. It's the Father Merrin prequel, where he was in Cairo in the 1940s, having flashbacks to World War II and dealing with his first encounter with Pazuzu, I believe. So I need some, as you can tell, I'm not hugely versed on the Exorcist franchise. This is only the second film. In fact, I didn't know there was a franchise until fairly recently. This is only the second film in the Exorcist franchise that I have seen. So joining me is a horror fan, one of our biggest horror fans from our regular stable of guests. We're delighted to have her back from Rabbit Hole Podcast, Lisa Leaheey. Lisa, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Jay. Very excited to be here, even though, it's one of those franchises that we kind of wish they hadn't kept trying for, but it is what it is.
Well, let's spend a little bit of time on the franchise before we dig into Exorcist at the beginning, because I have seen The Exorcist.
Yes.
I have seen it once. I saw it 7 years ago, and I didn't much care for it. Now I'm not.
Oh no, why not?
I'm not here to say Exorcist is a bad film. That's not what I'm going to say. It's a horror classic. Lots of people love it. It's billed as being the scariest film of all time. I watched it on a sunny Sunday morning, just to kind of cross it off the 1,001 movies you must see before you die list over on my site, Life vs. Film, and I just found it kind of slow and not very scary. It's got a lot of hype, and there were some scenes I was waiting for, and there's a lot of stuff kind of in between that I just kind of plodded through. And whether that's my ADHD modern sensibilities not fitting with a 1973 slow burn horror, whether that's because I don't find anything supernatural that scary, like ghosts and demons and things. I'm like, well, this isn't real, so this isn't scary. I just
Sure.
that's how I approach these things, and I feel like that's an incorrect way to approach this kind of film. So this isn't.
I wouldn't say incorrect. I mean, it's the way you approach them, and I think that's all valid. You're welcome to dislike films. There's plenty of classic, brilliant films that I'm not a fan of. I make no secret that as far as horror goes, I really dislike The Shining. I don't like what Kubrick did with it, and frankly, the first time I watched it, I fell asleep on the floor. So you're not alone in being not thrilled with The Exorcist.
The Shining, the first horror film I ever watched was The Shining, which I watched when I was about 15. I had a very sheltered upbringing in terms of horror films. My family, my parents, not into horror at all. Like Carrie is my mum's least favorite film of all time.
Oh, that's a good one.
So like horror just didn't exist in our house, and then I recorded The Shining on TV and watched it one night, and it traumatized me a little bit. I didn't watch horror films again for a long time. But then, I mean, I think we discussed this before. I have my own little history with The Shining where I've seen it twice, and both times I've watched it, somebody I know died.
Oh gosh, yeah, you don't need to go near that film anymore.
It's like the night that I watched it, I went to school the next day, and my best friend's brother's best friend had died that night.
Oh dear.
So a guy I knew quite well. And then the second time I watched it, halfway through watching it, I got a phone call from one of my best friends saying that one of our mutual friends had died in a motorbike crash. Like halfway through watching it. And I was like, well, I'm never going to watch this film again.
No, I wouldn't either.
I don't believe in anything supernatural, but like I'm 2 for 2 in terms of watching this film and someone dying, and it's not a film like I think it's very well made. It's not a risk I need to take.
No, and I agree with you on that. I mean, like, once is kind of a coincidence. Oh, whatever, how weird. And the second time, no, I wouldn't try for three.
Yeah, I'm
Absolutely
good.
not.
It's fine.
Especially since three is that magic number. You don't want to be messing with that.
Indeed, indeed. And it's
Um,
not like Renny Harlin directed it or it's BBC adjacent in any
there it
way.
is. See,
We
it's
never
not
have to
going to
cross
show
it off the
up.
list. It's
That's such a good point.
so what's your history with this franchise?
So, I mean, students have been telling me for years. They're like, why is this supposed to be so good? It's boring. It's funny. We laughed at it. And it's like, I think there is something to the 21st century sensibility taking that down. Um, I claim it as my favorite horror movie. My single favorite frame in all of cinema is when Father Merrin arrives to the McNeil home to do his thing.
Yeah.
It's actually the background on my phone.
It's an excellent shot. It's very painterly. It's a
I love
beautiful
it.
image. Yeah.
It makes me very happy. And so, yeah, like I also have read the novel a couple of times. I actually collect copies of the novel. Um, that and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which, is a totally normal pairing. But
Yeah,
the
sure.
I love the original all over the place. And I remember, I think my most pronounced experience with it was when they re-released it in the late 90s, like the version you've never seen, the whole thing. And I remember going with someone who had never seen it and was afraid to see it. And I don't know why she chose to see it, but she was like, this is what we want to do. So this was the restored version that included the crab walk backwards down the stairs, plus a couple of extra scenes or whatever. But I remember that one being the big deal. And I mean, I think I still have the scars on my right arm where she kind of like dug into my arm the whole time. But I remember very much seeing, the face of Pazuzu flashing on the screen a couple of times in these weird little quick cuts. And that had not been in the versions that I had seen previously. And every time I went to close my eyes that night, every time I tried to go to sleep, I saw that face. And so I still claim that as like the thing that has scared me, because it was weird, because it wasn't like I didn't have nightmares from it. It's just every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face, and it still kind of remains this thing that messes with me, that face. And so, I love what William Peter Blatty has done with it. I think the audiobook is exceptional. If you've never read the book, I strongly recommend the audiobook because he reads it himself and he does such a great job with it. William Friedkin, obviously, this classic film. It's one of those things where if you could go back in time to do anything, what would you do? I want to see The Exorcist in the theater with everyone else, because I'm just fascinated by this idea of, being one of the original blockbusters, this film where people literally lined up around the block for hours to see this film. And, not that I wish harm on anybody, but I'm fascinated by this idea of people passing out in the theater. And, the closest thing we have in our time is Blair Witch Project, where that was the story behind that one too. Like, people are, throwing up in the theater, or they're so scared by it and blah, blah, blah. And, my viewing of the Blair Witch Project was very different. But it sort of just kind of settled itself as my favorite horror film, just because of how wonderful it's done. I love Max von Sydow as Merrin. This whole idea, I think, is just so brilliantly done. So yes, of course, I own all of the other films, which I actually didn't realize until a couple of days ago when I went to check in preparation for this, because I knew that I had multiple copies of The Exorcist. I've got like 2 special edition Blu-rays. I have the version on DVD. And I'm like, I think I have a set. Let me find this. And I found it. And I thought it might have just been Exorcist, Exorcist 2, The Heretic, and The Exorcist 3. And it turns out, no, it's actually got all 5 of them. It's got these ridiculous prequels that came out in 2004 and 2005. So it's like, great, I don't have to pay to watch it. I have it. So I remember seeing both prequels in the theater.
Oh, wow.
I haven't seen either of them since. Like, seeing this film last night to prepare for today is the first time I've seen it in almost 20 years. Because I remember thinking it was terrible, and it has not improved in 20 years. I haven't watched Dominion yet because, as I was telling you before we started recording, these 2 films were essentially the same story. There's a whole to-do about why there's 2 prequels, why they both star Stellan Skarsgard. And
Well, I
I'm
mean,
like, if I watch Dominion, I'm gonna mix it up with the beginning. So let me just stick to the one.
yeah. So I'll give a little bit of the history there, because I watched this a couple of nights ago for the first time. I've seen this twice, which means I've seen this twice as many times I've seen The Exorcist, uh, which feels wrong, but I will not be
Yeah,
correcting.
you should feel wrong about that. I think you should go back.
So when this was initially direct released or directed by Paul Schrader, was
Yes.
the guy they brought in first, the guy who I know best from writing Taxi Driver, but he has directed a bunch of films in his own right. I just haven't seen any of them.
That's all right.
and,
It's a new list for you to explore.
and that's fully on me. I'm just actually checking if I have seen any of. Oh no, I I may have seen his Cat People. I think I've seen Cat People. Yes, I have, because I hated it. Yeah, so but he's written a bunch of stuff. He's read some. He's like First Reformed and Card Counter or something he's done recently that have been quite well received and are on my list to get to, but I just haven't got to them yet.
Yes.
So Paul Schrader was making this first. Uh, the studio saw an initial cut of it and were like, "No, what? Where is the exorcism? Where is the horror? Where is anything good? Get away from our film!" And
Hmm.
they threw him out and they brought in Renny Harlin. They initially brought him in for like 6 weeks to like tidy up what Paul Schrader had done, and Renny Harlin took a look at what Paul Schrader had done, discovered that they were two very different directors,
Hmm.
because they are two very very different directors, and basically threw out most of what Paul Schrader had done, and so it started again. So I think they spent something like 30 million on Paul Schrader's cut, and then a further 50 on Renny
Hmm.
Harlin's cut, because it's a typical Renny Harlin thing. He tends to go a little bit overboard with his budgets, and things don't always go well on his sets. You mean you've been on Movie Rob's season on Die Hard 2,
Yes.
and heard that he managed to shoot that entire film without any snow,
Yes.
uh, regardless of being everywhere that snow should be.
Yep.
He's an unlucky director at times. Deep Blue Sea, the set of that was plagued with locusts. There's a literal plague of locusts on his set of Deep Blue Sea. An actual thing that
Could have
happened.
used that here,
Yes,
but
could have used that very much here instead of having CGI a bunch of flies. So Renny Harlin came in, made the film, and they initially said like, oh yeah, the Paul Schrader cut, that'll be like a bonus on the DVD or something. Paul Schrader not happy with that, so he then went and finished his film. They gave him a little bit of money, a little bit of time to finish it, and that got a much more limited release, and
hmm
subsequently didn't do very well. And as much as I didn't know that Exorcist Beginning didn't exist, Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist, one of the worst titles for any film,
hmm
it just doesn't exist at all as far as I'm concerned. I couldn't find a copy of it to watch for today. I did try. It's not anywhere.
Oh, see,
So
that was the one that one is. So it's funny because this is the one, the beginning is the one that I would have had to pay for over here. Um, all of like, because I watched 2 and 3 in preparation just to make sure I remembered everything. And
thank you
Dominion
again.
was available, I think, on the NBC app. So I think that's Peacock. So that was there. They're all out there for us over here. Um, because
I,
apparently, we like terrible possession movies over in the US.
I picked up a second-hand DVD of Exorcist the Beginning for £1. But Dominion, there are second-hand DVDs out there, but they're not nowhere near me, and it's not streaming anywhere.
And it's not worth your search, so
I
don't
have
worry.
no intention to search any longer. Renny Harlin did not direct anything in that film, therefore it is no use to me.
Nope, it
So,
does not exist.
as you said, both of these versions star Stellan Skarsgård. I think that was one of the reasons why Stellan agreed to reshoot his scenes for this one was he liked Renny Harlin. He did. He
Yeah.
did an interview saying,
Well,
"Oh yeah,
because
me and Renny
nobody
Harlin."
else from the other film came for this one. Everybody else was like,
Uh,
nope.
I think Major Granville is the only other shared cast member. I think I read that. Yeah, Julian Wadham is the only other guy who's in both of them. It's a fairly small character. But yeah, no
Oh,
one
I didn't
else.
even pay attention to that. I missed that entirely.
No one else stuck around. But Stellan, there's an interview where Stellan says that, oh yeah, me and Ray, we're mates. I like him more than most of his films. Was in the interview. Yeah, I
I
can, I
mean,
can
I will
understand.
say Skarsgård is really the only thing that works.
That's great.
Because you do your reading up on the trivia, and Liam Neeson was originally supposed to play this role, and it's like, dude, like Von Sydow is Swedish. At least Skarsgård is Swedish. You get this Irish dude showing up, it's not going to work. So I'm glad at least we got Skarsgård, because I don't know, I kind of stare at him the whole time, and I'm like, do I see Merrin? And I do. I see, 1973 Merrin in Stellan Skarsgård's face. So I'm okay with him.
You say Neeson couldn't play like a Swedish guy, but he's played Oscar Schindler, so he can do accents and things. But I do see, and in that same interview, Stellan said that he's lost a lot of roles to Liam Neeson over the years. I was like, what are we missing out on? Stellan Skarsgård's Taken. I'd love to see that.
I would absolutely pay to see that.
Because this is the rare English language Stellan Skarsgård starring film. There's not a lot of them.
There aren't.
There should be more.
I agree. I like him very much.
I think he does a great job here. There's a real Indiana Jones if he used to be a priest vibe going on.
That is who Merrin is. So I will give them that, because the beginning of The Exorcist, typically sections that people complain about the most, they're like, what is all of this? He's, doing this archeological dig, and people are like, what the hell does this have to do with some kid in Georgetown being possessed? Well, that's him as an archaeologist. There is history to that. They just, if you'll pardon the pun, they really dig into it here, and it kind of goes on and on and on. But I don't know. I am of the thoughts where I love a film, I love a story that's a standalone. Yeah. I don't need to always have these prequels and continuing stories. Like, I don't need to know what Merrin's first encounter with Pazuzu is. I don't need to know what Regan did after her ordeal. Like, I am good with, here's the story of The Exorcist. Here's this one tale. Move on to something else. But that's not the majority of the movie-going population.
This does feel like a prequel no one really asked for, and it doesn't really add a whole lot to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's done this before.
Comic,
okay.
So. And apparently, so me and my blackouts, I don't have trailers that I don't watch trailers, so I have no.
You have influenced that upon me.
It's the greatest thing I've ever done.
It is.
But so I don't know much about this new film coming out. I am incredibly perturbed because I don't know if it's changed your release date where you are, but the film was supposed to come out on Friday, October 13th, which is where a horror film belongs. Well, a certain stadium concert performer by the name of Taylor Swift, you might have heard of her, has decided she's going to release a film version of her tour on Friday, October 13th. And so the production company has decided that the horror film is no longer going to release on Friday, October 13th. They've bumped it to October 6th for us.
Yeah, same here.
I am not happy about that.
I mean, is there a big Venn diagram crossover of Exorcist the Believer and Swifties?
No.
I'm not sure. I mean, there's probably some.
I guess, but...
But the great thing, Lisa, is you can go and see this on October 6th, but then it will be in theaters still on October 13th.
That's exactly what I've been saying. I feel like I'm going to do that deliberately to not see Taylor Swift's film. But I don't know. I feel bad because I will. She'll learn because of me. If I never see that Capital One commercial again, it'll be too soon. But I just don't know. Like, they've moved it on to a day that already has 3 things coming out. Like, I know the Sofia Coppola film Priscilla is coming out on that day. What the hell else? Dumb Money is coming out that day, and Craven the Hunter is coming out that day.
Those are films I do not care about.
No, well, I mean, I have them because I like to track them on my phone. But, I mean, I was interested in Priscilla. I said, that might be really cool. Craven the Hunter, I'm like, I need to hear more about it. And Dumb Money, I'm good. But it just seems like, why can't the horror film stay on Friday the 13th? It just seems so ridiculous to me.
Because you don't. It's like a 1 in 7 chance you get a Friday the 13th in October, and the year we get it, they take it away.
Yes, and it's just so I know that film, Ellen Burstyn is returning. So it's kind of an extended sequel, I guess. I don't know anything more than that. So we'll see. I'm not optimistic, and I think that serves me well because there's a TV show for The Exorcist. You may not know that.
I know of it, but I know it exists.
I get opinionated about things. And
No.
I know it's hard to believe.
Surely not.
So I was like, this is stupid. Why is this happening? And of course, I decided I was going to hate watch it. It's actually really good. I was amazed. It changed my mind because I watched it. And I was like, this is terrible. I'm going to hate this. And the first season connects to the film and the original, story and all of that. The second season is actually really good. It has John Cho in it, and he's really great. So there's only 2 seasons. I ended up being one of, 5 people who actually watched the thing before they canceled it. So I'm going into this new film with those expectations where it's like, okay, I don't want this. I think it's going to be terrible, but maybe you'll surprise me. That's kind of how I go into most horror films. I expect this to be terrible, but maybe I'll be surprised. It's just sort of the curse of being a horror fan.
The new Exorcist film is not really on my radar. If I hear great things about it, then we'll see. But I'm still annoyed. I haven't seen Evil Dead Rise yet. I missed.
You haven't missed much.
Well, it's coming out on Netflix in a couple of weeks, so I'll see it. And then
the beginning is really cool.
I was still kicking myself that I missed John Wick 4. So
that's. I make it my business every Friday afternoon after school. I'm in a theater. So
I would love to be able to do that. That would be great. Yeah.
It's just kind of my happy place. So I do that. And I mean, as much as I don't want to, I'm going to go see The Nun too, because I can't help myself.
Back in the habit?
Yep. I need to go. I need to be aware. And, we'll see how that goes. And there's another Saw movie, which I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I'm excited for, but we'll see how that happens too.
It's a franchise I've seen all, but I didn't see Spiral, but I've seen all the rest of them.
Yeah.
Which surprises
Spiral
people.
is good.
I mean, very few of the Saw films are good. I'd say like the first one is good, and then the rest
first
exist.
Two was great. Jigsaw I enjoyed. Spiral, you're not missing anything.
I only saw 2 is the only one I've seen in the cinema. But I think 1 is great. Anyway.
I actually watched that movie twice in the theater on the same day. I loved it so much.
I have never done that. I've never seen any film twice in the theater.
That's the only one. But you're right. I have digressed. If Mark's not here, somebody has to do it.
It's fine. I mean, I don't particularly want to talk about this film. So this isn't the last Renny film we talked about on here was Driven, which I also didn't particularly enjoy. But on that show
we had Ryan Gosling one, right?
No, it's not. That's Drive.
That's Drive. What's
Driven is Stallone, Burt Reynolds, Til Schweiger, and a bunch of people who didn't do a lot else. It's basically Rocky with cars. And 2 things I hate are driving and sport. And love triangles, and there's 2 in that one.
You're not going to be seeing Gran Turismo then?
Oh, of course not. No, ridiculous.
That's actually really good.
So I hear. But that's nice. I'm very happy for everyone who likes it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I've not seen Driven. I don't think I'm going to.
You really don't need to.
Thank you for the warning.
It's another one of those films. Like I work with a guy who is into Formula One racing, loves Stallone, loves Burt Reynolds, has never heard of this film.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
It's just I'm going to lend it to him so he can watch it. And
now he'll probably unfriend you after that.
It'll be fine. We work together.
He can't escape you.
Can't do that. So in typical Renny Harlin fashion, this was a real slog of a shoot. He had the film was released 10 minutes after he started work on it, which is a quick turnaround. And it was only finished a few days before it was actually released.
Mm-hmm.
But during production, he was hit by a car.
Yeah.
And was hospitalized. Had to take a 2-week hiatus, and then he was on crutches. He was directing on crutches for 6 weeks with 14 titanium pins in his leg.
Oh, God.
Say what you will about Renny Harlin, he gets back at it and keeps working as soon as he's able to.
I mean, this is clearly a passion project for him.
They clearly paid him for this film. I think. So
Yep.
I'm not going to go through the whole plot, mainly because I didn't quite follow a lot of it. So, it's essentially, it's, there's a Lancaster mayor, and he's been sent to Cairo to go and investigate something. Oh no, he's in Kenya. He starts out in Cairo, but he's sent to Kenya to go and investigate. There's a dig. There's a Christian church being exhumed or dug out, I believe, and the locals aren't fans of this, and so he goes along with Father Francis, played by James Darcy, to go and see what's going on. And whilst they're there, they meet up with there's a doctor working there who's Isabella Scorupco, who you may remember from GoldenEye. She is the Russian Bond girl in that film.
I don't remember. Most of the Bond films kind of go in one ear and out the other for me. But
that's her most notable role that I'm familiar with her from. She looks very different than in this film. She plays Natalia in that film. And but there's also Alan Ford as Jeffries, who like runs the dig. Is just the most vile person you can imagine.
He really is.
I love Alan Ford. He's so good at playing just despicable bastards. In Snatch is his most notable role, in which he plays Rick Top. And if you haven't seen the videos of footage of Darth Vader, but with Brick Top's dialogue dubbed over the top, then do yourself a favor.
Check that out. That's great.
Watch those. So when he cropped up, I was like, yes, and his face is covered with boils, and they get worse and worse as the film goes on. I was like, great, I'm going to look forward to watching you die. And we do. we see him die horribly. Well, we see his corpse afterwards, I guess. But,
yes.
He's racist, he's sexist, he's leering at the doctor. He's like, I've got a swelling in my groin. You can have a look at. He can only do one voice, which is his gravelly Cockney.
Yes.
And I love him so much.
Well, at least you got some enjoyment out of this.
Well, and when David Bradley crops up for one scene as Father Giannetti at the insane asylum, I was like, David Bradley's a Filch in this film, but he's not in it very. He's just there.
I mean, that he's a character who really got undervalued here. I mean, that he should have had more. I still don't quite know. Like, that was such a weird, random gallivant off to the side that I feel like that there's got to be something in the rewrites that got lost there, because it's such a strange setup of whatever is happening there in this Enement Boisson or Boissin or whatever the heck his name is. These French people. Besson. I've been taking French on Duolingo, so we'll see how I'm getting better at this. But it's just that whole section was just like, what we need a sanitarium. Like, we need to make sure this is somehow psychologically creepy. Are we throwing back to Exorcist 3 and, like this idea of, possession is actually a mental condition? Like, it just seemed so forced. Like, we need all of the check marks before this is a proper possession film.
I feel like we're going to spoil the ending to this film, listeners. If you haven't seen it, maybe don't. But we're going to spoil the ending.
I feel like either way, just don't see this film.
I feel like that scene with the sanitarium and going and seeing the Bession, and that needs to be like a memorable scene to tie in with the twist at the end when he sees the photo. So who is that guy? And you need to like recognize his face, because it's the guy who carved a swastika in his chest and then stabbed himself in the neck. I remember him.
Exactly.
That's an image burned into my brain now.
I mean, frankly, I would have recognized his chest. I don't remember his face because that's not what you were asked to look at in that sequence.
True, yes. So I just feel like that. I mean, something that I do enjoy about Renny Harlin films is when he kills people, they stay dead. Because he kills them, he kills them pretty hard.
Yes.
And that happens a bunch of times here. So we have the guy who carves a swastika on his chest and then stabs himself in the neck. We have the lepidopterist, the butterfly collector, who kind of has a little bit of an episode and sees the butterfly wings flapping, and then a butterfly emerges horribly from his mouth, and so he just shoots himself in the head.
Yeah, like trying to get, and that's a funny moment because he's like, "Oh, let me get this butterfly," boom, and he shoots himself.
I got myself as well. Oops.
It's like a funny kind of scene where, it's like, is he trying to kill the butterfly or does he pretend like is he planning on killing himself? That's another weird one because I don't know if I'm seeing butterflies flapping around me. My first thought is not to put a gun to my head.
Yeah.
Like,
It was
why?
an extreme reaction.
And it was great because it's almost as he's threatening the pinned butterflies because he's looking at them flapping and he puts the gun to his head and they stop. And so it's like, oh, the pinned butterflies, sweetheart, do not care if you take yourself out here. And then the butterfly from the mouth and he goes to shoot himself. But it's just such another strange moment where, as violent and as, I don't want to say tense because it's not really tense, but it just violent as that scene is, it doesn't make any sense at all.
I agree. I feel like the butterflies stopped flapping their wings so they could watch him shoot himself in the head.
Oh, that would make sense.
But so you have that death. You have there are CGI hyenas in this film.
Yes, there are.
So I listened to Renny Harlin's commentary. His initial plan was to have trained hyenas. But they tried, and it turns out you can't train hyenas.
No kidding.
So
I'm shocked.
I love that was his plan because that's everyone has trained hyenas these days. You see them all the time at the circus. No, so they wouldn't even walk across a room like they wanted. So let's do CGI hyenas, and they rip a child apart.
Yes.
There is a scene where a kid gets ripped apart by hyenas.
I do remember, and that was what remained from 20 years ago when I saw this in the theater. It's like that started it came about in that sequence where the two brothers are like near that well, and you're like, oh, I remember what's gonna happen now. Okay, and it's probably the most disturbing scene in the whole film because it goes on for way too long.
It does. There's that scene, and then there's the when the other child who they believe to be possessed, because the film tells us that he is possessed.
Yeah, they really whack you over the head with it.
Where it turns out he's not.
Mm-hmm.
Not happy with that. No. That's upsetting. So he is possessed as far as we're concerned, and all the locals try and perform an exorcism, and all of their bones rupture and break out of the skin. That's the scene I found quite unpleasant.
Well, and that moved very quickly.
Yes, there is that.
It's like, I think that's all CGI too. I didn't think that was done very well, but not that I need to see people's bones protruding from their legs, but it did not go on as long as the hyena scene. Renny really reveled in that particular scene.
He did.
I feel like he's trying to get his revenge on some playground bully with that particular scene.
Yeah, he had a what was that kid's name? Because Joseph was the younger one. James, I think.
This was James. James was the older brother. Yeah.
He had a nemesis called James, and he just wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
And then Alan Ford's death. We don't see the death. He's trying to reach for some booze behind the bar. Mm-hmm. Sees his face with all the boils in it, the rupturing, and then the camera zooms in on his eye. And the next time we see him, he's been strung up and there's a big hole in his chest.
That was another one. Like, I was looking at it, but I didn't want to look at it, but I felt like I should look at it. Like, were flies emerging from the boils, or
I think so.
Ugh.
Yeah. And when we see him strung up, there's like birds pecking at his eyes and things.
Yeah, just ugh.
Yeah, fun times.
Delightful.
And we don't really see much of Father Francis' death. He just kind of appears as a corpse later on.
Mm-hmm.
But
he's sort of a means to an end. He's like, we need to get into the church somehow, and we need some kind of reveal because it's not Joseph, and we need to put some shock on this. That's why Father Francis was there.
Yeah. And what was I going to say? There was a villager gives birth to a stillborn baby covered in maggots. Another very unpleasant scene.
Yeah, very, very. Again, like, Renny likes to keep the things on screen long enough so that you try and look away and then you look back thinking it's saved. Nope, still there. Yeah.
So those are all the kinds of things that I think were added that were not present in the Paul Schrader cut.
Right.
Yeah, because it just wasn't horror-y enough.
Yes, apparently not. And the leeches, we have leeches too. I could have done without those.
Yeah, I could always do without leeches. Then. Oof. You're a fan of Stand By Me.
I am. Film. I don't like the leeches either, but they're at least done better in that film.
Yeah. Speaking of other films that we like and that this relates to, there's a sequence at the end like The Descent when he's crawling through the tight tunnels and then it's the lady is possessed, the doctor is possessed at the end. Spoiler alert.
Yes.
Because it's a real blindside because it's no way that it couldn't happen. It's not. It just feels like in The Exorcist, there's a kid possessed all the way through it, so we're gonna make you think there's a kid this time, but actually it's his girlfriend, and that was a real like aha moment that doesn't make any sense in retrospect.
Who it turns out is married to Bession.
Yes, the Nazi in the sanatorium.
And it was just like, what? Like, the fact that through all these conversations that never would have come up. I just don't buy that at all.
Well, I mean, she had the concentration camp tattoo on her arm. And
right.
Is her partner supposed to be a Nazi, I think? So maybe has some shame in that relationship? Or doesn't like to talk about it? There could be reasons, but maybe she's possessed from the start.
That could be too,
secret.
but I mean, if this is the guy she was married to, what is she doing on this dig with him?
Yes, and I don't think she's possessed from the start, because the scene when she's having a shower, and then she finds out she's bleeding quite a lot to the sciatica. That apparently is when she gets possessed.
I think so. Yeah, I think so too.
According to Renny in the commentary, and which makes sense.
I mean, thank goodness for commentary, because clearly the film didn't make that clear.
Yeah, because I saw that and goes, oh, she'll be dying soon then, I guess. But no, she survives until the end of the film, which she dies out of spite. Like when she is depossessed, and then the Azu's like, well, I'm taking her with me. Head wound.
Yeah. It didn't make any sense either. But yeah, that whole possession scene, I mean, it's just so cartoonish. You know, it's like I see these scenes and I think that's what people saw when they watched the original film. Now, not in the 70s when it first released, but like I look at this film and I think this must be what people see when they're watching the original, because it's so silly looking. It's cartoonish. You know, she cuts her tongue. She splits her tongue, so she has that like forked tongue.
I kind of liked that.
The terrible. Well, you must have enjoyed that in Evil Dead then.
I did, yes, yeah.
Because that they took their time with that particular film and that scene. That's a heck of a film. Not directed by Renny Harlin, sadly. Otherwise, we could talk about that here. But the bad contacts and just the weird blue face paint, it didn't work for me.
I feel like looking back at the 70s version, that's mostly practical.
Yes.
Entirely everything's practical in that film.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of the skittering across the ceiling in here is very much CGI.
Yes.
And when we see she's like dangling from a inverted crucifix, I think.
Yes.
And that she is doing some very impressive core work.
Yes.
Dangling down and kind of bending up backwards, and then
yes,
the scene where the moment where she drops down onto the floor is just terrible CGI. It's awful. It's very.
I haven't seen like bad. I mean, the flies are even like horrible CGI. Horrible, like reminiscent of like the Amityville sequels. They're just so bad.
To quote myself from the Driven episode we did recently, it's original Jumanji style CGI.
Yes.
It just doesn't hold up today.
No, I agree with you. In fact, it's funny you bring that up because it's a film I saw when I was an adult. And I'm like, why do people love this film? Because
it's a kid's film. I saw it as a child.
Yeah.
And I liked it. But the monkeys look awful. And everyone agrees with that. And there's no one out there saying, those Jumanji monkeys. Oh, yeah. That's the pinnacle. That's Jurassic Park level.
Oh, God. Nothing. Not even a fraction of that.
No, let's think. Jurassic Park, reptiles, easier to animate. Monkeys, no. Too many limbs,
I don't
too
know.
Much fur.
You would think flies would be manageable. Like, just,
you would think.
Kind of make it look okay, and then just make a bunch of them. But there's that
flies
where
a decade after Jurassic Park.
Oh my God. Seriously. You would really think. And this I remember this was sort of that zone where everything was like 3D, everything was CGI, and it was just this one film after another with really, really bad CGI. It was kind of like everybody got their chance to play. And it just, nobody knew what they were doing. And so I feel like at this point, anybody who's using CGI hopefully knows what they're doing. But it's so awful. That scene where Merrin is standing there and this blast of flies comes up at him from the floor. It's like Skarsgård wasn't aware when he was supposed to react because he's kind of just standing there with CGI flies flying. I don't know. It's just so poorly done. It seems like something with this huge budget. You put it somewhere. Please put it where I can see it.
Yeah, it would have been nice. Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of the budget went to the other film it was made and they're not used. So,
I guess. I guess.
so what did you think about, we see, there's a flashback that we see a bunch of times of lots of things keep reminding Father Merrin of his time during the war when there was a Nazi officer was kind of killed in a village, and the SS commander present wanted some retaliation from the villagers. What did you think of that scene? Any thoughts?
I mean, I see what they're getting at. I see this element of this is why Merrin has lost his faith. This horrible thing that he was essentially forced to do, where this SS guard wants him to pick individuals from this village whom he's going to kill in retaliation. What's interesting is I say I didn't watch Dominion. I did start it, and Dominion begins with this same sequence, and does it better, actually. Schrader's version is better. In fact, there's no child killed in Schrader's version. Like this little girl.
Yeah. Listen, if you want to see a Nazi officer shoot a child in the head again and again and again,
Oh my
watch this
God.
film. I think you see it like 10 times.
Yes. It's just like, oh, this is terrible. And it almost becomes, again, there's no weight to it. It's almost so absurd and so heavy that you sort of just dismiss it, as opposed to being more disturbed by it, which is the intent. And I think the fact that it just keeps coming back and keeps coming back and keeps coming back and keeps coming back just does it no justice. It makes it silly, which is not something you think you would say about such an event. You wouldn't think that I would describe a scene where, innocent people were killed because a priest pointed them out because somebody needed to die. You wouldn't think I would call a scene like that silly.
We've had a kind of a slate of fairly depressing scenes on the show recently where children die. Nick and I talked about the Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End recently, which starts with a bunch of pirates being hanged, one of them a child who starts singing and then is definitely killed. And have you seen Tentacles from 1979?
I have not.
Okay, octopus film, homage to Jaws, where the opening scene is a mother. There's a mother with a baby in a little carriage, right by the shore. She crosses the road to talk to a friend. Bus goes past. Carriage disappears. Octopus killed her baby.
Oh my goodness!
Opening scene to this Jaws ripoff.
I mean, if you're gonna shock people, I guess that's a way to do it.
Not the only child that dies in that film.
Oh my goodness!
Not a good film.
That's troubling.
Tentacles is a bizarre film. It stars John Huston, Shelley Winters, and either Peter or Henry Fonda, I forget. None of them are in the last half hour of the film.
They just said to get this, I'm out of it.
Yeah. They're like, what little arc we had, that's done, we're out of here. Bo Hopkins, we'll tag you and your orca buddies in to finish this film off. Off you go.
Orca. Amazing.
It's a SeaWorld trainer who has a couple of orcas that he gives a motivational pep talk to, and then they go kill the octopus.
My goodness. I may need to see this just because it sounds like a film.
Yeah, I think it got re-released this year actually.
Oh my gosh, I gotta get this.
It's an experience. So we've picked through most of my notes. The professional digger's prowl that Merrin gives to Joseph.
Oh, right?
I figured that was going to come back at some point. They make
No.
such a big deal of it, and then like he's struggling with his brother for it, and like, oh, this is gonna, he's gonna kill the demon with this. Nope, it doesn't. That's the thing that's just not brought back up again.
No, Chekhov would be very disappointed.
Indeed, yeah.
No. And I mean, I think that thing was just it's kind of a red herring to make you think these boys are going to fall down this well. And nope, hyenas.
Of course.
I sincerely think that was somebody's decision process. That they're like, how do we, make this scene tense, and how do we shock, and how do we scare everyone? It's like, well, we're going to make them think this is going to happen. And
But
then
actually,
random hyenas will show up and rip this child apart.
Actually,
And then
this
drag
is a
me down
Lion
a
King
hallway.
film.
Ugh.
Whoopi Goldberg's going to voice a character in that. And Shenzi's going to.
Oh, and Ed. I miss
Cheech
Ed.
Marin is going to, yeah.
Oh, I love Ed.
But I mean, hyenas are in the Bible as like bringers of bad omens and communicators
Yes.
from the underworld. So that there is that link, and they make some attempts to bring in the more religious stuff. Like they have the plagues, they have some of the plagues. So they have the flies, they have the boils. When there's the power cut, which I guess is darkness, and then the doctor is bleeding. So I thought, oh, that's blood. And they have like the death of the firstborn son, that gets ripped apart by hyenas. But then they miss out the other half of the plagues.
Well, they can't do the locusts because that was the heretic. That was in the second film. Very focused on locusts.
And they don't do
did.
lice. They don't do livestock pestilence because there's no livestock in this. There's no frogs. And there's a sandstorm, which I guess you could equate to hail, like as a kind of weather event.
I mean, I guess.
This is the kind of straws that we clutch to here on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta grasp for something because there's not a lot here. There's not a lot here. And it's funny because I was watching this, I was mentioning that face as I very abruptly changed gears. Watching this again, I remember, it must be Dominion, frankly. I remember watching the film in the theater and seeing that stupid face, right? The face of Pazuzu. And thinking, I'm like, I'm going to get through this. Thank goodness I've made it through the whole film. And then the face of Pazuzu showed up and I was like, God damn it. Like, now I'm going to see this thing. And so I'm watching this movie and there is a flash, and I actually went back and paused it because I'm a glutton for punishment. It is not the face of Pazuzu. I mean, I think it's supposed to be, but it's not the one from 1973. And in looking, so I'm thinking about when he's in the caves and he's with Joseph and he's about to tell Joseph to read the Roman ritual, which absolutely would not have been written in English, but who am I to say? There's just no way, but sure, we'll let Joseph read it. And I thought that was cute. I'm like, okay, I like that he's being involved in the exorcism, but there's this flash over his left shoulder. Well, it's his right shoulder. It's our left side of the screen. And I went back and I paused it. And it's just this weird blue, creepy face thing. And it's not the statue. It's not that icon of that weird sort of serpenty kind of head. It's not the face of Pazuzu from the original film. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they're like, we're trying to make it Pazuzu. Could they not get the rights to that kind of image? I'm actually confused by it and a little frustrated because if you're going to flash the face, it needs to be the face. And then the trivia says there's two more times. There's one time where it shows up when Merrin is pulling the top of the sarcophagus off. And is that the name for it? That is a sarcophagus, right?
I think
the stone thing. I just had a moment from like 6th grade history where like the thing that the Egyptians were buried in, like the thing.
Yeah, that's the sarcophagus. Yeah.
So this probably isn't. But anyway, he's pulling this stone lid off. And as he's peering in, the face kind of appears in the stone. That has even that might be 2.5 seconds. I could barely get it. And it's sort of like a weird, it's stone colored. It doesn't show up very clearly. And I can't see the face either. There is a third time. I was not interested in trying to find it because I couldn't remember where that scene happened. But I was actually frustrated by it. Because I'm the only person who's frustrated by such things. But it's always the small details for me.
Well, to confirm, a stone coffin is called a sarcophagus. So
Oh, I was right. Yay.
So it is the lid of a sarcophagus.
Good.
Yeah. The only other note I've got is they're in Cairo in this ridiculous heat, and all these stupid British soldiers are wearing these thick woolen jumpers. What are they doing?
I
Fools.
I couldn't tell you. I could not tell you. I don't understand. I mean, maybe the the blocking of the heat and the sun, or the not the sun, the sand, and I don't know, because there's no logic to any of that to me, but I figure somebody had to make a decision somewhere.
Yeah, and it all looks very official and uniformly, but it just, we're in a bit of a heat wave here, as are you. We talked about it before we started recording today.
Yeah, exactly.
So just watching thinking, what are you doing? Take off those layers.
Yes.
Madman.
Being foolish.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe it was a way to, to show the British thinking they're civilized. Are they British? They're British, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're the. I mean, I think it was a commentary on like colonialism. Like, here we are, we're going to take over, and they keep calling the native people savages, and like all of that same sort of stuff. And that scene where Granville goes right up to their leader, the tribe's leader, and just like takes a gun and shoots him right in the forehead. I'm like, you son of a bitch, you deserve everything you get.
Yeah, I would have liked some of the locals to have had a bit more character, a bit more to do, because
seriously,
Merrin, one of them is his driver.
Yep.
I'm not sure what his name.
Chuma.
Okay, I played by Andrew French.
Yep.
And like, this is a character who could have been something, but he's just not given anything to do.
Yep.
And which is, is a shame.
I agree. And again, I feel like they ended up on the cutting room floor, or they were written and rewritten. Emekwe, Joseph and James's father.
Yes.
Like, he's just sort of peripheral. He's got that weird way of like showing up and then disappearing, and then showing up and then disappearing. Like, there are those scenes with Sarah caring for Joseph, and like he shows up and she's like, I'm so sorry, I'm doing everything for him I can, and she looks up and he's gone. And then, like that scene, I think it's this next scene where his tribe mates come, I feel like that's so dismissive. I'm sorry, I don't have the right word.
We call them savages. When the savages met.
Oh, I don't want to say that. That's what.
When the local tribesmen.
Jay, no. But they come in and they're gonna do their ritual, and he's just like gone. Like, wouldn't you have stood by? Aren't you gonna be there to like your child? Not to mention, this guy makes a very big deal early on when he first meets Merrin that he's Christian and that he is Catholic, and these are my boys, and I'm teaching them the way of the Bible. And I don't know, maybe it's like paternal guilt that because that he brought his boys into this Christian Catholic world, that this is what has happened to them and he can't handle it. I don't know. It seems one more loose thread that was not attended to properly.
Yeah, there's a few of them, which is a shame.
Yeah.
I don't know whether like one person had worked on this from the start and it had just been one succinct film, would have allowed for a better result, or from what I've heard from the commentary and other interviews, Renny made the film based on the screenplay he was given by the production company, by Morgan Creek Productions. So whereas Paul Schrader, he made the script they sent, but they didn't like it, and so they adjusted the script and then gave it to Renny Harlin, and then he made a more entertaining film. I don't know.
I guess.
I haven't seen the Schrader one, but it sounds of it, it's got a lot less horror and a lot fewer fun deaths in it. I do always enjoy a fun death in a Renny Harlin film. Have you seen Mindhunter? Sorry.
The TV show?
No, the film from the same year as this, actually.
Gosh, years ago. Years.
Yeah, because that was the first time I watched when we covered that, and some of the deaths in Mindhunter are fantastic.
I'll have to go back to it.
I'm sorry, it is Mindhunters. Yes, it's an excellent. It's not an excellent film. It's a fun film.
It's fun. It's entertaining.
Yeah, there's some fun deaths in it. That's where we started calling the term people dying hard in his films, because they there's no like, oh, did they survive that in Mindhunters? Because no, they didn't. There's no way they could have. They're in pieces. They have shattered. See that? That's their lungs. They haven't survived this.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Damn it, it's
Fun.
fun. Look.
So did you have any other notes on Exorcist: The Beginning?
No, I believe we have covered it.
Okay, well, two things left to do. Firstly, how is this film similar to Deep Blue Sea?
I love this. I've been thinking about this.
A longer list than I thought there would have been. So we open in a bigger flashback with a man with a cross on a chain. There's a lot of actually crucifixes and crosses on chains in many of Renny Harlin's films. It turns out. There's an interaction with a bird. Stellan Skarsgard is in this film. A priest is a main character. Animals eat someone, tearing them apart. There is blood in fluid when the IV starts filling up with blood.
Yep.
A lady gets undressed before there are problems with the electrics.
I love that that's a detail good for you.
Because she has a shower, then there's a blackout, and in
But I don't remember that specifically, but I love that that's one of your plot points. It's like, this is similar.
In Deep Blue Sea, Saffron Burrows takes her clothes off and electrocutes a shark. Says getting undressed, problem with electrics.
Oh, I kind of want to I want video of you watching these films as these similarities pop up, and you're like, oh, there's another one. It's like a bingo card for you guys. I love this.
When my worst one, best one so far is for the first Pirates of the Caribbean film. I had to kind of pause the film to write this one down because, wait a minute. When all of Aquatica leaves for the weekend, they're left with a skeleton crew. And in the first Pirates of the Caribbean, it's a crew made of skeletons.
Skeleton crew! Well done. You get a round of applause for that one.
I paused the film and I told that to my wife, and the look she gave me.
Oh, I can imagine. I know that I have succeeded in whatever it is I'm doing if my husband rolls his eyes at me, so I'm pretty sure you had a similar moment.
I'm shocked she didn't just get up and leave me forever. Anyway, other similarities. A bird eats something. There is a lady with a secret. The lady is the secret villain of the film. There's praying. There's a dead body jump scare. The score is by Trevor Rabin, who I found out recently is from the band Yes, and he wrote the song Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Nice.
A storm comes in, helping to trap people, and it owes a lot to a horror classic from the 70s.
I love this. That's so great.
List of similarities between Exorcist: The Beginning and Deep Blue Sea. And finally, how deep and how blue is Exorcist: The Beginning? So, Lisa, as I'm sure you know, Deep Blue Sea is approximately 14.5 meters or 47.5 feet deep and about 31% blue. Do you think Exorcist: The Beginning is, on average, deeper and or bluer?
It's deeper.
You say?
I say deeper.
Why do you say deeper?
Because they had to go way under. So you've got this church that has been buried. So if you think about where they are at the surface, they have to go down into the church to get to the floor level of the church, because even the doors are submerged, that's a water term, are buried under the sand to begin with. And then once he gets into the church at the ground level, he discovers that this sarcophagus is covering a cavern way underneath. So there are these caverns and caves way underneath where the statue for Pazuzu is. And, there's sort of this suggestion that there's sort of a gate to hell. And the suggestion is that, no, wait, that's the other movie. Wait, was this I'm blending with Heretic.
This is the underground church, but I didn't think they went that far underground after the church, but I'm open to discuss this and make it deeper if you want.
I don't know. That's my take on it, because I think that they had to go, you think about how big a church is, like if you're thinking a proper dome ceiling and that sort of stuff. So that's pretty high. And then however low they have to go below that in order to trap the evil that's down there. I'm thinking of the Heretic where there's a scene where they think that's where Lucifer actually landed. Or was that this?
That's this one. That is.
It is this one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, this is what happens when I watch these films. They're all the same.
So, I'm willing to adjust the spreadsheet. How deep do you think they go once they go down from the church?
Like measurement, I'm not good at that. You got to figure at least. I'm sorry, I'm not good at that. And then I'm going to give you my horrible American metrics. Like I can't. I'm going to do things in feet,
I can convert. That's fine.
So you got to figure from the floor of the church to the top has got to be a good, I mean, if I'm going to underestimate it because it's not a contemporary church, you got to say it's a good 25 feet, which is probably underestimating it because I can't do these things well.
Okay. I'd guessed about 4 meters, which would be about 12, 14 feet.
Oh,
So
it's got to be more than that.
I was close, but I'm willing to adjust that. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to go more than that because that domed ceiling, I think, is more than 12 feet.
Okay. And then they kind of go down. There's like layers of how they go down. There's like a little bit and then a lot.
Yeah, so you got to figure at the very least double it.
Okay,
right? So at the very least.
Yeah.
And then there's the caves. So I don't know. I don't know. I'll say 50 feet altogether. So what does that come out to be?
So 50 feet would be about, what's that? It'll be about 15 meters deep. So yeah, let's stick with that. Okay. So then.
Yeah, so it's close.
Yeah, that didn't actually change things that much because they're not underground for a lot of the time. They are on the surface for most of the film, and there's some bits he's exploring the church, and then it's like the climax is underground. So that works.
And then the other thing that I would challenge you with is the fact that Merrin himself, if we're thinking about how tall he is, so I don't know, do I want to do Skarsgård's height or do I want to do von Sydow's height? Because the statue is definitely taller than him, and he's 6'3".
True.
He's 6'3". So if you figure that statue is at least 7 feet tall, and so you've got this big towering statue, and the cave, it's not totally like up against the ceiling. Like there's cave above that too. So that's another reason that makes me think that, they're definitely going into a certain depth, and there's sort of that kind of an oubliette down there. This is a big old bubble of space.
Well, so allowing for all these changes, this now works out being about 2.3 meters or 7.6 feet deep, whereas I had it at about a meter deep on average.
Yeah,
so
I think
it's made it deeper. How has that affected the ranking? Ooh,
that's what I'm thinking. Because didn't you say 14 meters for Deep Blue Sea?
Yes. It's not bothering that because it's only 2. But that means depth-wise, this is now deeper than Deep Blue Sea 3. So it's gone up a few. This is deeper than Deep Blue Sea 3, but shallower than Shark in Venice. A classic film everyone should see. Not kidding. Shark in Venice is glorious. You would very much enjoy Shark in Venice.
Is it better or worse than Santa Jaws?
Oh, Santa Jaws, Shark in Venice, and Ghost Shark are for me the kind of holy trinity of bad shark movies everyone should watch.
Okay.
So
I'll have to add those two then.
Ghost Shark. There is a ghost of a shark that can inhabit any body of water.
Amazing. Between that and this Ouija shark that I have just recently heard about, I need to see that too.
It's on the list. We'll get that. And then Shark in Venice is a remake of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade with sharks.
Amazing.
Starring Stephen Baldwin and Scarlett Johansson's sister.
Even better.
It's a wonderful, wonderful film. That is our longest episode of this podcast so far. And Mark wasn't even on it.
Gosh, really?
Yeah. And in terms of blueness, do you think this film is bluer than Deep Blue Sea?
Definitely not.
No. So we've covered 2 black and white films on this show, Lifeboat and The Lighthouse, both of which are 0% blue. This is the next least blue.
Mm-hmm.
This is 0.67% blue. This is, if it weren't for that shower scene, that's the only scene with like blue on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
If it weren't for that, we'd be looking at 0.13% blue.
Wow.
So there's a few shots of sky here and there. There's a little bit of clothing, but for the most part, this is all sepia. It's all oranges and dust, and
it's the only way to take archaeology seriously.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be brown.
I mean, otherwise, what are we even doing here? They're not. Yeah. They're surrounded by sand.
It's not authentic archaeology.
This is bluer than Lifeboat and the Lighthouse, less blue than Renny Harlin's other not really blue film, The Covenant. In fact, not counting the black and white ones, Renny Harlin has the bottom 3 on the list of The Long Kiss Goodnight, The Covenant, and Exorcist: The Beginning.
See, I think that's pretty cool. You gotta be in charge of something.
Die Hard 2, Born American, and Cliffhanger are all just above that. So he's got the bottom 10 sewn up, basically.
Congratulations, Mr. Harlin.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work to make something not very blue,
Uh-huh.
I guess. But that'll do it for Exorcist the Beginning, if I never have to think about it again. So thank you for joining me. So what would you like to plug? You have a bunch of stuff going on.
I do. I have a bunch of things. And so it's great that I tend to go on tangents because I'm part of a network called Rabbit Hole Podcasts. So I tend to go down my own little rabbit holes. So you can catch me on the Rabbit Hole Podcast Network. I'm on a few shows there, but one in particular is called Between the Scares, in which Jason Soto and I are working our way through everything that Jason Blum and Blumhouse Productions have put out into the world. Our most recent episode was Whiplash, and then we're heading back toward The Purge pretty soon, but I know there's a few random ones in there. So our more recent episodes were Mercy and Whiplash, and my memory escapes me. Forgive me for that. You can also catch me on Pictures and Conversations, which is the Rabbit Hole Podcast Book Club. And so in August, we were talking about Neil Gaiman's American Gods. In September, we talked about The Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean. And our October episode is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. So we encourage you to check us out there. We do one book a month, and we release on the 20th of every month. And you can catch me on X or Twitter or whatever the heck we're calling it now. And I am at Foolish Minion 20. So you can follow me there and see what kinds of silly movie shenanigans I'm up to.
Excellent. And as always, you can find all of Mark's stuff over at moviesfilmsandflicks.com. And you can follow this podcast on all social media, whatever it's called, at Deep Blue Sea Pod, or email us deepblueseapod@gmail.com. Next week, I said this last week, but then Exorcist got moved around. So next week we're going to be doing the aquatic scene from Alien Resurrection, the swimming through a kitchen. Mark and I are going to have a chat about that scene. We're sticking with horror for this month, and then there'll be a Pirates of the Caribbean: One Stranger Tides coming up soon as well. And you can find my writing at lifeversusfilm.com, but there's not a lot there. So why would you waste your time?
As much J as possible.
Sure. Then follow just me on social media at JAYCLUITT on Instagram, and at LifeVSFilm on X, Twixter. Yeah, that works.
I like it.
And that'll do it for Exorcist the Beginning. Thank you once again to my guest, Lisa Leaheey.
So excited to be here. I love talking about horrible films with you, Jay.
Anytime. I've been Jake Lure, and I'll deep blue see you next week.